Hello, this is Wayne O'Connor from WayneO'Connor.com. And tonight I'm going to share a story from my book, Adventurer's Horn, entitled Half Jack and Leprechaun. This book was selected for review at the 2014 Midwest Book Review. Half Jack and Leprechaun. Corporal Phil Callahan smoked an Opus 10 Petite Lancero cigar as he lay concealed beneath the hedge that surrounded Camp Commander Kensington's three-story vintage plantation house. Lights out had passed, so except for the trilling of Louisiana bullfrogs and the grunting hack of alligators, the night was still. Only a few weeks previously, Phil had rushed together a soiree he'd hoped to save for the holiday 2000 party later during the coming winter. He had arranged the party instead as a wild retirement party for the former CC. Unlike the old CC, the new camp commander, Kensington, did not like him. The old CC had chewed his chops and even demoted him once. But Phil was resourceful, and people seemed to like him so well that they were quick to overlook his errors. He mentally replayed his last shenanigan, secreting a remote audio-video link into the new CC's head, and then programming the clip into the base's computer network screensavers. Officially, Corporal Callahan was a resource requisition specialist, but his hobbies were computers and high-tech gadgetry. Phil emerged and crouched in the liquid darkness that flitted between the stirring leaves of a pecan tree, adjusted his infrared goggles, and listened. His rakish grin vanished. Marching boots that chopped like jackhammers on the sidewalk grew steadily louder. "Just great," fumed Phil silently through clenched teeth. "Sounds like that big berserker Megadeth who just chipped in for some monitored R&R. Muscles tense, heart racing, Phil eased back into the concealment of the hedge. He shivered as the coolness of nocturnal autumn seeped into his body. Fresh grass scent from a late-season mowing competed with the fragrant tobacco plume that curled from his cigar as he alternately puff-sucked and then softly breathed into the night air. Still cupping the air around the red embers of his cigar, Phil breathed a sigh of relief as Megadeth's footfalls seemed to start sounding farther away. He surveyed the courtyard through his goggles, listened briefly, ground out his cigar, and then scooted out from under the hedge. Several months earlier, the sweet shrub Calycanthus floridus would have been clustered with maroon flowers. Phil's quiet brush against it released a faint hint of the strawberry fragrance for which it was well known among professional landscapers. "Good," he whispered to himself. "Megadeth didn't spot me." Suddenly a hand with the circumference of a dinner plate clamped over his mouth, covering most of his face as well. Abruptly, the goggles were removed from Phil's face and dropped into the grass. "Not," whispered Megadeth, following a deep chuckle that sounded like the genesis of an earthquake. The colossal shadow whispered in a gravelly rumble, "Are you all the wrecked man they call Leprechaun?" Phil's worst nightmare was confirmed. The brute strength, Texas drawl, and the muttered profanities that crafted each sentence into vulgarity-parsed daisy chains could mean only one thing: Megadeth. "Yeah," Phil sighed. When his face was released from the Marine's steely grip, he said, "I'm Requisition Specialist Corporal Callahan, also known as Leprechaun." He added, let's make a deal. You don't turn me in. I'll get you a special order of anything you want. On the house, of course. Women. Belgian glitter snort. Top shelf French cognac. I hear tell y'all installed some experimental gadget from R&D Corps in the old CC's gambling den. One that has girly programs. I've been looking all over for y'all tonight, Callahan, and my patience is worn mighty thin. How about a souped-up pre-market IBM clone, both an office and gaming bundle, virtual reality glasses, and a free 1-year subscription to www.hotgirls.com. Megadeth thumped Phil's chest with 2 massive fingers. Don't you jerk me around that-a-way, cyber puke. I ain't negotiating with y'all. Phil cringed. He wasn't afraid of a fight. He had been in plenty of brawls, even with the big guys. He won some, and he lost some. Megadeth was a different kettle of fish. Megadeth was MSOR, a covert ops man who could kill you 12 different ways in less than a minute. And rumor had it that Megadeth was a national asset, not a James Bond type of agent, but more the Rambo type, who was becoming more psychotic with each secret mission. Eventually, his handlers would have to put him down or imprison him. But until that time, he was an extremely valuable commodity, and allowances would be made, and his messes cleaned up. Phil did not want to be one of those messes that would be swept under the rug. What's the problem? I paid over $4,000 to get my hands on that rig. I don't want that there computer of yours, sneered Megadeth. He added, it won't be real enough. And I don't want that there 3D picture blankety blank. I want to smell it, hear it, feel it, taste it, and live it. Okay, you made your point. It's the only one. I'm related to a guy who rubs elbows with the ultra-top secret crowd. He made a remark once when he was a little too drunk, and I fished a bit. It was developed at a secret R&D underground base in New York 4 years ago. After that, it was shipped to their implementation facility at A-Shark. What do y'all mean, just one? Flared Megadeth. I got me 2 Shark combat knives. They didn't make just one of those. He thrust his lantern jaw forward and waved his massive finger in Phil's face. You can't tell me that they made only just one of those girly machines, cyber boy. Just cool it. I can get it for you. The problem is, I can't get at the other ones. The original is warehoused, and modified copies of it are being used for another project. I know the correct protocols, and have the ability to borrow it temporarily. How? Asked Megadeth. I'll fabricate a message from New York R&D to send it for testing to this base or somewhere else where you can pick it up. I know the codes that, when written into the request, delivers a secret message. Expedite immediately. Ultra top secret protocols. No questions asked. When it gets lost, they won't go looking for it. No wonder they call you Leprechaun. That's a neat trick. Real neat. Megadeth visibly relaxed. What did they want with that girly machine anyway? What a musclehead, thought Phil. That is just one of the uses of the program. A-Shark is going to make combat simulators. It has a special Rambo program for guys like you. It's so real that you can get lost in the program. Nodding, Megadeth whispered, I could get into that too. How can y'all get something that special? Now that they have the new model, and because it's warehoused like the Ark in the first Indiana Jones movie, it has become a forgotten relic. It's mothballed, has a major design flaw, and not too important anymore. And of course, like I said, I know just where to send the request and just how to word it. Megadeth snapped, What kind of design flaw? The original designer had someone monitoring each use, so they didn't have an escape hatch that users could use to bail if something went wrong. But I heard it had a virtual reality girly program. Megadeth snarled. Are you scamming me, Callahan? Keep your voice down. "You sound like a cement mixer," warned Phil. He pulled a disc holder that contained a silver compact disc from his pocket and pressed it into Megadeth's hands. I wrote in program data enabling the user to see real-time or end the program. The one you heard about that I ran at the old CC's retirement party was from a video, Fun with the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders, that I input into the VR machine. "So this is that there disc?" asked Megadeth in his customary gravelly, curse-every-other-word syntax. "I think I'll just keep it." Phil shook his head and then replied, "You don't want that one." "Why not?" snapped Megadeth belligerently, his chin jutting out again. "I guess it's a bit dark to read the label," offered Phil, "and I disabled the escape hatch program on this one. You are stuck in this sim until it ends." Megadeth bent over and picked up the goggles that had fallen near Callahan. He tossed them back at Phil after he'd used them and spat. "What? Fun with the neo-Nazi letter boys?" Megadeth threw the jewel case disc holder at Phil and exclaimed, "Don't touch me! I killed queers!" "Ouch!" grunted Phil as he caught the disc holder that had thumped hard against his ribcage. "I'm not queer. The truth is I don't have to send for the VR machine. It's still here. The new CC stole the machine from me, and he still has it. I'm going to switch my cheerleaders program with this new one." Phil fumed. "Did you know that Commander Kensington had the gall to steal the VR machine and then demote me to corporal for misusing company resources?" "Not. I hear tell the real scuttlebutt is that he has it in for y'all because he caught y'all twice with his daughter. Back home would take guys like y'all and make steers out of y'all." "I was just talking with her." "With a rep like y'all have, Callahan? Yeah, it's mighty hard to believe. Anyway, how are you going to get into Kensington's house? And how long until I can get at their goodly machine?" Phil ignored the giant's last question and grinned. Another set of toys from the Lost Warehouse. Electro-molecular Bondo gloves and shoes. Megadeth nodded. "Spuddy gloves and fly shoes. I used a pair once on a mission. Come to think about it, a guy who looks a hell of a lot like you named Agent Smith trained me and a couple of SEALs on how to use them. And one more thing, Leprechaun. If y'all get caught, don't rat at me. I'll kill y'all." Megadeth drew a Bowie from his belt. "This is one of my shock toys. One was special issue. This one I got off an Arab sheik. Made of some weird alloy. Cuts quarters and gator hides like they was port wine cheese." He posed dramatically, placed the blade in his teeth, and sprinted towards a nearby dock. Following a flawless dive, Megadeth was gone. Phil wiped his sweaty palms on his pants. He checked for guards, raced to the house, removed his shoes and donned his spider gloves and fly shoes. He crawled up the wall until he reached the 3-story window. Phil licked his lips, pulled another gadget from his pocket, and traced it along the window pane. When he heard a click from inside, he pocketed his gadget and slid open the window and climbed inside. Phil scanned the room. Infragoggle images of luminescent green and gray revealed a gambling hall that had been painstakingly designed by the former CC. Several Tiffany lamps and a few knickknacks were missing, but otherwise most of the furnishings, including a player piano, chuck-a-luck cage, and a roulette wheel, greeted him like familiar friends. Oil portraits of long-dead, scantily clad sporting girls with Mona Lisa smiles and eyes that mocked and beckoned and followed wherever you sat or stood, lined the walls. Phil traced his way past and around the long mahogany bar that had once been owned by Al Capone, and worked his way to the walk-in safe. He punched in the digital code. It had been changed. He had glow spray and a miniature battery-powered black light, which would assist in ascertaining the new code. Licking his lips, Phil checked over his shoulder and then opened the safe and stepped inside. Except for the VR module's central processing units and its 3 sarcophagi-shaped body containment devices, the room was empty. Phil chuckled sardonically as he removed the Dallas cheerleader's disc and replaced it with the neo-Nazi Leather Boys program that he had downloaded from alternatelifestyles.com and altered for use with the VR module. Phil selected the download data option. Less than a minute later, the Dallas cheerleader game had been replaced by the Leather Boys, but the game title had remained the same. After putting the Dallas cheerleader disc into the empty jewel case, he patted it like a favored puppy and then put double-sided Scotch tape on the back of the case before pressing it to the bottom shelf of the rolling cart that had come with the VR module. After exiting the safe room, he ambled jauntily towards the exit window. He was so busy imagining Kensington's reaction that he failed to hear the rasp of the key that had just unlocked the door into the private gambling den. Phil threw a leg over the sill, leaned out the window, and started to exit. "You sons of bitch and goat, Callahan!" yelled Commander Kensington. "I know it's you." Room light switched on. "I blankety-blank told you to stay away from my daughter." Callahan jerked spasmodically and fell from the open window. He felt a scream rise in his throat. Everything went black, blacker than the dark of the moonless night that had concealed his entry into the old CC social room. Phil awoke briefly following surgery. His mind and body were numbed with drugs, but not enough to still the angry cries of his pain-racked body. Phil heard brief snatches of muffled conversation, as if the people in his room were miles away. "Hello, Phil. This is Nurse Susie. Feeling today? My name must be Phil," he thought. "Hello, Phil. I'm Dr. Johnston. Can you hear me?" For just a few seconds, Phil's head cleared, but then it was touch and go again. He concentrated and then mumbled through his dry, sticky mouth, "Yes, I can hear you." Dr. Johnston continued, "Leg through surgery. Well, always have a limp. More worried about possibility coma." Phil heard the voice he thought was the nurse. What was her name again? "You have a visitor," he heard her say cheerily. His addled brainwaves struggled with a modicum of success to find their focus. "Hello, Lieutenant Callahan." Phil Callahan. I thought it was Corporal Callahan. I wish I could remember. Should I know you? He thought. His vision started clearing. He watched as a petite Latino with dark brown eyes and average attractiveness finished a salute. Sanchez, at least that's what her name tag said, wasn't at all striking, but there was a light that danced in her dark brown eyes and ruby smile that lit up the room. "I'm legal specialist Carrie Sanchez. Somebody pulled some strings for you. Whoever they are must be quite the puppeteer. All charges of misappropriation of government property and illegal entry onto government property have been dropped and expunged from the records. You will be given an honorable discharge in exchange for a special agreement. All I need is your signature. Well, a few of them, actually." Phil signed the paperwork as Legal Corps Sanchez pointed them out to him. By the time he had finished, his head was swimming once again, and his eyes had lost their focus. He passed out as he listened to the pat-smack footfalls of her patent leathers when she exited his room. How much time had passed, Phil was unsure. Off and on he would regain consciousness. Phil gave up trying to remember his nurse's name when he concluded that they changed at least 3 times a day. "Nurse. I'm sorry, Mr. Callahan can't. Visitors, playing cards, swim, trophy, cigars. I'll tell him that." John, Linda, and Ed stopped. "Gifts." Nurse. "Bath time. I can rubber ducky if one." Nurse. "It's a sunny day outside, Lieutenant Callahan. After your IV, I'm shades. Would you like that?" Doctor. "Good. How are we today, Phil?" Nurse. "Hey, who do you think you are? Lieutenant Callahan needs... I'm calling security." Doctor. "Excuse me, Nurse Jackie. Phil's uncle. Security can't touch. Clearance. Even Prez. I am Jeff Clinton." Phil concentrated. He felt like he was deep under the water, out of breath, and struggling to make it to the surface before he drowned. Phil hated that feeling. He made it to the surface. Phil listened to the sounds of people and medical monitors. He opened his eyes. Phil began to become more focused. and he started to gather more of each conversation in his environment. Uncle, Phil wondered. Uncle Jack's dead. My mother's side or my father's? What's he look like? For an instant, a shadowy image appeared in his mind. I can see myself sitting in the den of a ranch-style house. Why can't I see his face? Uncle Jack had said he needed a guy like me to help him with something. It's a start, thought Phil, as the mental picture vanished like water down a sink drain. Nurse, spit an image, younger though, brown hair instead of black with a tinge of gray. Doctor, let me introduce you. This is Jack, and this is his assistant, Miss Katsopoulos. Miss Katsopoulos. Please call me Irina. Shy voice, Greek accent, thought Phil. Uncle Jack. So, Doc, what'll we need to do? Doctor. I'll prescribe painkillers, therapy. Been coming in and out. You said you have a medical doctor on staff? Facility. Any day now he'll come out and stay out. Expect temporary amnesia, anxiety, possibly personality changes. Irina. Sounds like great deal of work. I not know. Phil thought he heard scratching. Signing paperwork. Uncle Jack. Doc, send a medtex. Transfer the gurney to our chopper. And could I have a moment with my assistant, please? Phil heard the echo of footfalls as the doctor and nurse exited the room. He kept his eyes closed, but tried to listen to his Uncle Jack converse with the assistant, Irina. Irina complained. I'm not upset about putting Phil under deep cover to... I'm not nurse. We need to hire nurse. Uncle Jack replied, You work for me, Irina. This is what I want you to do. Besides, it is necessary for me to do the Transjordan embassy delivery. I not nurse, flared Irina. You're not a damn secretary either. Your daddy gave you Dora's job after the accident. Then you deep-sixed my other couriers. Not to remind! Phil heard several foreign phrases that he thought were cussing. Rena, snapped Jack. Keep it down. We're in a military hospital. Rena lowered her voice. I not say I won't do. Just letting you know I don't like. Jack replied. I'm sorry, Rena. After I get dropped off, I'm going to be gone from the base. I need you to keep an eye on Phil. I want him well cared for, and I'm going to need his help. You're not the lady anymore. Enraged, she whispered heatedly, Don't remind, and don't call me other name. Rena, I'm just saying. And when have I called you that? I just used that other nickname that Dora calls you, Mouse Lady. I thought you liked that name. I do, said Rena. She stilled her tears and added, That nickname okay. Why is she crying? Wondered Phil, as Medtex rushed into the room, opened his bed curtain, then injected a sedative into his IV port, and rushed him away. Phil listened to the snippets of short whispered conversations as the squeaky gurney wheels clacked above the pitter-patter background of multiple footfalls. He heard the whirring of the copter blades, but fell into a deep sleep before he could feel the anticipated lift of his gurney into the promised chopper. Scene fade. How long? Asked Phil. Rena smiled and stopped sponging him. His words were slurred. Your first real words. Everyone will be so happy. My first real words. Slurred but understandable, thought Phil. Previously, Phil had spoken in frustrated grunts and moans. He remembered hearing Rena speak. At times, that may have been merely the result of his frequent delirium. Phil remembered her husky Grecian accent that had sounded divine. Rena had been arguing with his Uncle Jack when they had transferred him out of the military hospital. Whenever Uncle Jack had stopped by, she had left him, and Uncle Jack alone. Lately, the hard lines around her mouth had softened. Phil knew she possessed better than average strength. He remembered too well the strong and supple hands that had massaged his body. First, a therapist had worked with him, and then also trained Rena. She was a vigilant taskmaster, and had seemed to expect more from him than the therapist. Rena had moved his dead weight with little effort. Daily Phil watched her with silent amazement, soaking in every detail of her tall form, which was draped in layers of sweaters and sweats, under thick skirts. Dark colors like chocolate, navy blue, coal blacks, and grays were her usual tints of choice. Usually solid in color, but occasionally she wore an outer skirt of buffalo check or Madras plaid. Phil was certain they had spent a great deal of time somewhere where the sun didn't shine, yet Rena's skin was deeply tan. Rena glided through her actions with an economy of movement. Black plastic glasses, thick as Coke bottles, and long dark brown hair that concealed her face shrouded her in mystery. From time to time it seemed to Phil as if shimmers of silver danced around the left side of her face. Phil wondered why her left hand was never without a long silken glove of creamy white. At first he thought she was hiding a prosthesis, but her movements were too natural. Irina's smile caught him by surprise after she flipped back her hair with a supple twist of her neck. When she smiled, Rena literally took his breath away. "How long have you been here? That is what you ask?" Phil nodded. 2 months, she replied. "You came out of coma the day after you came to live here, but it was weeks before you could move your arms and legs or sit up by yourself. And today you have spoken real words for the first time." Rena spoke fairly good, if heavily accented English, but occasionally articulated with choppy sentences. Personal pronouns such as I, you, he, she, it, we, and they were often skipped, but not nearly as regularly as when she had been younger. However, if stressed, Rena reverted to a substandard confabulation that marked her as one speaking English as a second language. "Thank you, Rena," said Phil slowly. Then he added, mumbling, except for one word, head. "You have headache?" Phil replied, head." Rena scowled and turned away. "I need to go for that." Fingers waving as if she were speaking in sign, she added a few words of Greek imprecation. Phil turned red and stuttered, bathroom. Rena sighed. She brought Phil's wheelchair. He signaled that he wanted to try transferring himself. She continued as she wheeled him away from the therapy room. "Sorry, not understand what you want. Think man thing." She smiled again. Following the bathroom break, Rena asked, "How you like go outside?" "Yeah," he added as they traversed a long hall, like many halls and caverns down below. In this hallway there were miles and miles of tubular lights that emitted a soft bluish-white glow that never grew warm. Ancient environmental machines, most of them still operating, kept tunnels and caverns cool and free of toxic gas pockets in their long-abandoned warrens. Most of the gas pockets were invisible, while the underground areas closer to the surface stayed around 50 degrees. The deeper tunnels and caverns might reach temperatures in excess of 130 degrees in areas not protected by the ancients' environmental systems. Green fog mists formed in various places from time to time that weren't lethal, but caused extreme paranoia and mental fatigue. According to legend, dark, muttering voices emanated from the mysterious green fog. Some versions claim that you only heard the demented voices if you had been poisoned by the fog, while other accounts claim that sounds might be heard just because one was near to a green fog bank. If one followed the tunnels that were lighted, they were supposed to be safe. Such fog banks were soon cleared by the environmental monitoring systems created by the ancients. In hallways that did not contain the lights and monitoring systems, or where cave-ins had destroyed them, green fogs, or the invisible lethal fogs, might linger for days or weeks before vanishing of their own volition. Other tunnels that weren't lighted did exist, either parallel to the main lighted tunnels or sloping downwards into the deep chasms. Very few people ventured into the lighted tunnels, and the unlighted tunnels were considered death traps, laced with poisonous pools, toxic fogs, deep pits, cave-ins, and the almost blind cannibalistic crawlers, also called mole men. Crawlers, who looked similar to the Gollum of the Lord of Rings fame, had excellent olfactory and auditory senses, but did not like to venture into the light of the main tunnels, and were known to crave human flesh. They also ate fish and eels from the pools, as well as the bioluminescent fungi that grew on the dark tunnel walls and many of the snakeheads' caverns. Mostly the mole men and mole women would travel in packs and surround one or two lost humans. Male humans were almost always killed and quickly consumed. Unless the crawlers were in the throes of hunger lust, female prisoners were often captured and kept as slaves or confined in breeder rooms. Cornered crawlers preferred to attack from concealment or with superior numbers, and not mano a mano. Whether they were humanoid or just deformed humans, genetically degraded and suffering from living away from fresh air and light, was unknown. Thankfully, their numbers were few. Snake men, or snakeheads, were a different story. Many of them lived in the warrens of the subterranean catacombs beneath the level occupied by the humans. At times they were also called naga, but that species was actually an entirely different race that lived in the caverns along Shambhala's surface. Snakeheads, the off-white reptilian humanoids, lived in small tribes scattered throughout the deepest realms of the Agartha tunnels. Snake men were very territorial by nature. The 6 to 9 foot tall, frog-skinned snake men were able to walk the lighted tunnels without being blinded like the crawlers, as they possessed secondary glare lenses that automatically activated as necessary. Snakeheads rarely ventured there, as they had other exits to Shambhala and other tunnel systems. Once there had been a war with the snakeheads, a very short one, with the U.S. military, which had not gone well for the human soldiers. That vital intel had been withheld as above top secret about the existence of and abilities of the snakeheads, and not provided to the planners of the soldiers' operation, had only added to the stinging defeat of the Black Ops Ranger teams that were killed and later devoured by the snake men. Snakeheads, who stunk like rotting meat and sulfur, were formidable adversaries of great strength and speed, with razor-sharp teeth, claws, and wicked barbed tails. They could be shot and killed even with small arms fire, but those wearing Kevlar-esque leather armor were resistant to all but armor-piercing ammo. Snakehead warriors were even more dangerous than standard snake men, because they used a high-tech range weapon, a box that was mounted on their leather chest armor, mentally activated, that shot a ray of cobalt lightning. Even if you survived the intense burning blast, which would often melt and char fingers and toes, no matter where the beam hit, eventually it left one with a virulent form of cancer. Many Black Ops soldiers had died fighting the mottled white snakeheads. Humans had learned that if left undisturbed, that most snakeheads were not apt to leave their dens to attack human zones. Even during battle, if you were able to get outside of what they considered their territory, they usually gave up the chase quickly. Not long after the first battle with the Snake Men, U.S. Black Ops Marines dropped a small mobile nuclear warhead into their warrens. Apparently, it had been discovered and deactivated from a long distance. The second attempt met the same fate. Snake Men didn't mind if a few humans wandered into their camps, as they considered man-flesh a delicacy, where they would consider a few lost men as sport, They would become enraged berserkers if attacked by human soldiers. Unlike the crawlers, who preferred a raw and bloody repast in the midst of a vicious multi-pack sneak attack, the snake men preferred their humans roasted over huge open fires, following an in-your-face battle, and then consumed in a ritualistic ceremony. Where the snake men acquired wood for their huge fires was always a question, but it was conjectured that they traded with others of their kind who lived in the Shambhala countries of an inner core world like that of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Pellucidar novels. Legend also stipulated that the snake men processed both the flesh of their rival clans, crawlers and humans, into a raw liquid slush that was kept in vats and then utilized to feed their young, who would soak in the sanguineous pabulum through their skins. There were no ancient lights in the outlying tunnels or deepest catacombs, only in the main tunnel system as well as hub areas, and those lights were always cool to the touch. What was even stranger was that the light mechanisms seemed to draw from a zero-point energy source and appeared to last indefinitely. As Phil and Rena approached a section of tunnel with a niche and a retina scanner device, Rena gazed into it, and the niche opened into another tunnel. As they entered the new tunnel and came to a place where two artificial cicada trees, potted in great ceramic urns, stationed like sentinels on watch, Phil groused, "My legs feel like wood. I don't want to have to stay in this wheelchair forever." Rena laughed and asked, "You not like a wheelchair? You want antigrav saucer from Q Storage? We have one, very small, not come with mythical little green men, though." Phil chuckled as Rena wheeled him through the invisible door between the two cicadas. Excited by the sight of the out-of-doors and reveling in the dry heat, he took over pushing his wheels and then dashed around the enclosed patio. Tiring quickly, Phil rolled to a stop under a clear circular table with an orange and green umbrella. He gazed apprehensively at the small pool in the center of the patio. Phil shivered and looked away quickly. It reminded him too much of fighting for consciousness in the last few months. "Welcome to Ozark, New Mexico," said Rena. Grinning, she added, "Roswell is the nearest town." Phil was puzzled, not only by the familiarity, but the not-quite clarity of the names. Ozark, Roswell, and New Mexico, but by the feeling that something about his environment was off. Upon surveying the surrounding patio, he noticed that towering buttes that thrust into the pale blue sky outside of the patio seemed to vacillate into and out of focus. However, the verdant oasis within the patio seemed to remain steady under his curious scrutiny. Barely audible, he detected a low humming, followed by fade-outs or sizzling color fluctuations, which teased his senses and marred the verisimilitude of the exterior simulation. Only the patio, pool, and latticed bowers were bereft of the enigmatic effect. "If topside holo circuit gets any weaker," grumbled Rita, "we'll have a security risk. Daddy should have fixed long ago, but he never did. Inside sim's easy to fix, not so solid sims. Not backward engineered inside sims we make. Plenty drives for ancient inside sims, and inside sims we make. Ancient made solid sims rare, delicate, complex." "Illusion?" asked Phil. He tried to ask about her father, but the words came out garbled. He felt frustrated, but he also noted that his head was clearing. He was optimistic that his speech would clear as well. "Yes," replied Rena. it is illusion, but the mountains, solid illusion. Patio wall, sim fake illusion. Hand or body pass through fake illusion, but not solid illusion, if that makes sense. She paused when Phil mumbled a query and then asked, "What?" Misinterpreting his garbled question, Rena added, "If you want to go inside, you can enter your room through the bower behind you, or use the bower next to the pool to go to Jack's penthouse. His has a retina security room on other side, though, so only your eyes get you into your own personal suite of penthouse." Phil nodded, but had a clear as mud expression. "Trust me," grinned Rena. "It looks like a cedar patio wall all around us, but you just ignore it and wheel on through where I showed you." She added, "Look where we entered. Do you see a door? No, it is there. Do you see cicadas like ones in tunnel where we enter? Between the two cicadas, you just walk or wheel as may be, and you enter main facility. No retina scan there. Just go through into hallway." Rena sat beside Phil. She reached behind him into the pouch behind his chair and asked, "Do you remember Jean, Linda, and Ed?" Pulling out a canvas bag with a blue and orange Aldi's logo, she handed it to him. "I should have given you this a long time ago, but I forgot. Sorry." Phil reached into the bag and pulled out a 12-inch trophy that was engraved with the message, "First place, 400 meters swimming, Phil Callahan." Rena said, "We have a large inside the pool, real one. I'll have to get the therapist to show us some water exercises." "Don't like water," mumbled Phil. He sat the trophy on the table and reached into the bag again. "What does the magic hat have for me this time?" He smiled proudly as he spoke with only one slur. He pulled out a cigar box and a lighter. Phil read the box, "Wolf Brothers Rum Cigars." He cut the tip with a tool that came with the kit, lit it, and took a few puffs to get it started, careful not to inhale the acrid plumes. Phil started coughing, scowled, and tossed the whole kit into a round gray can that was tucked neatly under the table. "Oh, sorry," said Phil. "I suppose I should have asked you if you wanted them." Rena laughed. "I not to smoke. Uncle Jack, he quit long ago. Thanks anyway." Phil grinned. "Are you certain I'm Phil Callahan and John, Linda, and Ed were my best friends?" "You were like, what do they say, social butterfly, I think. Jack said you had lots of acquaintances, a few close friends. Although, he said the old CC at your former base, what's his name, liked you very much." Phil's brow furrowed. The name was on the tip of his tongue, but it just wouldn't come. "Don't worry. It will come. It takes time. By the way, I just have to say, getting rid of those cigars was definitely an improvement." Phil reached into the Aldi's bag, fished around, and pulled out a deck of playing cards. The backs were a dark blue diamond print with the name Excalibur written in flowing cursive inside a white oval. He grinned and said, "I remember a hotel playing blackjack." His face lit up as he shuffled and dealt 2 hands of 7-card draw. Rena arose fluidly from her seat. "No, thank you. I not play." "You have fun, Phil." "I have work to do," she added. "Remember to go to your new rooms." As she pointed, "Wheel straight through bower and into wall. Remind me to have a threep. Play cards with you." Phil's sad frown became a smile when Rena promised him a card player. He asked, "Who is Pio?" Rena frowned and then replied, "Do you remember the tall droid in the Star Wars? I watched that movie 31 times, and then I lost count." Rena laughed. I love Star Wars, and I haven't seen it that many times. She added, you remember, my father made the C-3PO unit for my birthday when I was a young girl. He actually a bit taller than the android in the movie. We call him C3 or Threep. It was designed to be butler, and of course Threep was programmed to speak and interpret several languages, and he has a few other tricks as well. I reactivate him now. Threep, be good company for you. Irina waved and walked back towards the facility entrance. Phil blurted out, Gabasta! Irina turned briefly to Phil, looked confused, and then said, Yes, Phil, very good. That was your old company commander before Kensington, and you didn't slur. You're improving already. He watched as she walked through the wall between the two cicadas, as if it wasn't there. Oh, okay, then, mumbled Phil as she disappeared. He reshuffled his cards and was about to play Klondike when Uncle Jack appeared, carrying a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. Black hair, but tinged with gray, his resemblance to Phil was striking. He smiled warmly, unbuttoned his trench coat, and sat with Phil. I hear you are talking today, Philly. That's fantastic. Uncle Jack clapped him on the arm. Heal fast, boyo. I've got work for you to do. We've been using hyperbaric oxygen therapy on you. I wish we'd have put you in it when we got here. So if you're wondering, we didn't grow any new partially human parts in the biolab or fill you full of cybermetal bone replacements or synthesized organs. Thank you for taking me in. Nonsense. What's family for? Besides, I have ulterior motives. I've wanted you working for me for years. When you hacked into Q Storage and started retrieving trinkets like the Spy Trainer module and figured out how to use them, I waited for my opportunity, and I wasn't as drunk as you thought I was that one night. I was just casting bread on the waters. We had a rum and cokes, I think, said Phil. Right you are, boyo, he added. You have the knack, a sort of prescience about gadgetry. I am hoping you can finish some of Victor's inventions. Jack slapped his head like Peter Falk in Columbo. I almost forgot, Philly. There are only two ways out of A-Shark, and Doc says you can't have a mem wipe because of your amnesia. You'd become a veg-head. He checked his watch. Damn, I'm late. Gotta do an eyes-only briefing with Clinton. Jack turned as he was leaving. Oh, just one more thing. We packed you out of your private hospital room. You have a wing of the penthouse now. Dora's going to have steaks for supper. You and Rena are invited. Did Rena show you how to use the bower here to get to your room? He pointed through the bower at the cedar patio wall. He laughed, did a little skip and dance number, and then added, Gotta go, boyo. I'm late for a very important date. Phil watched his Uncle Jack double-time it through the two cicadas. I think I'm remembering him now, thought Phil. He's always been a bit absent-minded, but brilliant and a natural diplomat when he doesn't feel like being blunt. Yeah, I remember his just one more thing and I gotta go routine. He did that quite often, and when he did it with a cigar in his hand, he looked just like Peter Falk when he played Columbo on the Sunday night mystery movie. And then not long after, we had the rum and cokes that night. Next thing you know, I'm at their funeral. If it would have been a closed casket, maybe I'd have seen this coming, but Uncle Jack and Auntie Dora always seemed to be running on overdrive and autopilot. When Jack was younger, the family joke was that he'd put a big double pinch of coffee in his mouth, throw in a sugar cube, and then quaff a large cup of hot water. What a way to jumpstart your day. More vague memories of Uncle Jack and his hush-hush business trips surfaced. Talking about trips, thought Phil. One of the stories he told me on the night of rum and cokes, actually I think it was Crown Royal whiskey and Pepsi, was about a concealed hole in the side of a mountain that opened up into a plane and copter hangar. Is that how they airlifted me here? But I can't complain, thought Phil. I am improving and regaining my memories, and I think things are going to get better even faster now that I have an incentive. I wonder, how much is Threep like the Star Wars character? Maybe it can tell me more about this place and Rena, he thought. I already know she's the 8th wonder of the world, but that's just not enough. Phil took his noon regimen of pain pills and sundry extras out of his long pillowbox and choked them down. I'll play a game of solitaire and explore my new room. Maybe it'll have tap water, or even a fridge with snacks and beer, or a bottle of Fuji water. This is the end of Half Jack and Leprechaun, Part 1. This is Wayne O'Connor from WayneO'Connor.com Fantasy Theater. Stay tuned for Part 2, where Phil finds he loves his new job, and he finds he gets to work with Rena.